Jordan and Gretzky, Serena and Ruth. Remembering great ones is easy to do. But what about the no-names who spent their whole lives long snapping footballs and catching sack flies? They're guys, remember that guy. Remember that guy, remember that guy, remember that guy, remember that guy. They're just gonna remember some guys now.
Infield comes in, winning run 60 feet away. Fly ball, left field, and it's gone! Oregon walks it off! Desiana Datman, are you? Remember that guy? The show where we mine our memories from nuggets of nostalgia about peripheral players, past and present. Hey there, folks. It's me, one of your hosts, James, here with another softball fan who loves cheering on Greenbirds.
Go Greenbirds. Go upsets. It's already been an incredible tournament for NCAA softball. Diaz back with you once again. And we have a very special guest. He is perhaps the only man in America that can actually throw an accurate softball pitch. Please introduce yourself.
It's me, the guy who saw that Liberty University was being celebrated for something and had to go yell at everyone on the internet about how no one should ever be happy about anything that Liberty University does.
Ah, come on. Those girls didn't do anything bad other than go to Liberty.
They have gone to Liberty of their own choice.
Yeah. We can enjoy the suffering of their opponents when their opponents are also lame. Just keep it to that. This is just really an endorsement of hating. You don't have to cheer people when someone you don't like is succeeding. You can just hate. That's what I'm going to be doing for baseball for the rest of the season.
Just going to hate Texas A&M and never remember who they lost to.
I mean, we've well established that I'm able to just turn off the ethical part of my brain when watching sports. I have to as a Newcastle fan. I've long since removed that switch from my inventory. I think inventory works.
Circuit board, inventory, matrix. Yeah.
Circuit board.
What have you? No, we will not remember Liberty. However, there are some things that are making memories for us right now. And you know what? On the topic of softball, I'll kick it off because it is a great softball tournament so far. It has continued to be a great PWHL playoffs. I think we are still at this point. I would need to go back and double check to make sure that Minnesota was the lower seeded team in the finals last year. But as of recording this, and this might already be wrong by the time this episode comes out, still have not had a higher seed win a playoff series in the PWHL playoffs. That's just fun. But more importantly, we can tell you that by the time this comes out, there will have been approximately a week and a half of WNBA action, including we got a Monday WNBA game today, y'all. Unthinkable a couple seasons ago. And we're recording on Monday, just after the opening weekend. A lot of fun stuff happened. People are going to continue to insist that Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese have some rivalry that they do not want to have. The Aces were very gracious and allowed the New York Liberty to celebrate their ring ceremony without any drama. But this is going to look forward for a moment. I do real quick want to ask you guys a trivia question just to see if you get this. 69 or 420, the number of NBA players who are currently under contract. I went through Spotrac today. I went through every single team's roster. I saw how many players were signed to a contract by that team. Again, with that as my source. Sorry, WNBA, my friends.
WNBA.
Yeah, 69.
It is 69. It's 153. And that's, I think, kind of where I want to jump off from this point, because there are an immense amount of storylines going into this year. There is whether or not the Liberty can repeat with a diminished but still very good team. There's what's going to happen in Phoenix now that Griner and Taurasi are fully out and they need to basically carve out a new identity. There's whether or not Asia Wilson could potentially win a record-breaking fourth MVP. There's the coalescence of the young cores in Indiana and Chicago. I, in particular, am really excited to see what happens with the SEC alumni of Camila Cardoso and Haley Van Lith and Angel Reese now getting to have Courtney Vandersloot come in with championship pedigree as a New York Liberty champion. We could go on and on. Golden State, we get to see what that team even is. We get to see Kelsey Plum try to be a number one option in Los Angeles alongside her old friend Dearica Marie Hamby. It's going to be a great season, and all of this is going on with literally 153 players. 153 women are making this happen right now, and that number will continue to grow. We've got more teams in the pipeline, but it's astounding to me that, for one, that is as big as this number has ever been. And two, that this is in the last couple years, since at least I got more serious about it in the last, however long Asia Wilson's career has been. I've basically been watching since her rookie season. We've, as a group with some other friends of ours, got to have our WNBA fantasy league over the past couple years. It's just sustaining so much more of the conversation on the broadcasts of ESPN and Fox Sports. It's getting so many more nationally broadcast games. You are able to play fantasy WNBA basketball. That was not possible just 4 years ago. And it is just exciting. And to think that it is literally 153 women, plus the coaches and the coaching staff and all of that, who are also making this possible. It's wonderful. It's wonderful. I'm really excited for WNBA season. Thank fucking God I don't have to care about baseball anymore.
So we're all big fans of the WNBA. One thing I do want to talk about real quick, though, is there's talk about the Connecticut Sun being sold and possibly relocated. And it's kind of wild to think about the fact that we currently have a professional sporting franchise that is owned by a Native American tribe that plays in a casino arena. And they were early adopters to the WNBA and massive supporters of the WNBA. So if the Sun do get sold to someone with deeper pockets than the tribe, we shouldn't forget the fact that their support helped the W become what it is today. Even if this means Philly gets a team, because Philly has been mooted as one of the possible places that the Sun could move, either Philly or maybe Boston, because they want to keep the team in the Northeast.
Boston.
I mean, it depends on if they can get an ownership group together in Boston with a place to play, because Philly has already said, we want a WNBA team. The Sixers have put forward, the fact that they would pay for one and put it in their new arena. So if Boston can't come up with that, then Philly would probably be next on the list. But it's still sad, because the cool thing about sporting leagues that have come up in the past, 20 years or so, as an MLS fan and a Women's Super League fan and also a WNBA fan, is a lot of smaller markets got teams because there was, that's where the desire was. And we're kind of losing that as the league continued to grow and, they kind of chase bigger markets. But I just want to make sure we always remember those small markets that were important to the growth of the league.
Well, and it's like the last of the markets remaining that is really sustained by the college game. Like the Connecticut Sun are what they are because the UConn Huskies are what they are in a big way. And that's really cool. I should also mention, I think we have two different teams that play in casinos, because I'm almost certain that the Aces, I wasn't able to go to the arena while I was in Vegas the one time, but I'm pretty sure they play in MGM, or I know they play in MGM. I'm pretty sure the space that they play in would also be considered inside a casino.
Fair enough.
Two nickels. That's all I'm saying.
Vegas is just one big casino, so we can just count Vegas as every Vegas team plays in a casino.
Yeah. I mean, look, if that move comes to fruition, and if I were to have a nickel for every time that Philadelphia acquired a basketball franchise from a college basketball hotbed, I would then have two nickels, because it was the Syracuse Nationals that became the Philadelphia 76ers.
True chains.
Which I am conflicted about, because as we have discussed at length on this podcast, the Sixers are bad and are a bad franchise. And I think part of that is the stench of not having, a fresh beginning, a fresh start. So I would be the Wario meme. I've won, but at what cost? If I do get my beloved Philadelphia WNBA franchise at the expense of Connecticut. But they've got the Huskies. They'll be fine.
They've got the Huskies, which means they can continue to just pick whatever pro team they want that has their most recent college star. That's, Dallas. Another thing that's exciting, seeing Paige Beckers. Again, plenty to be excited about the W. I don't want to take up all the oxygen. What is it that is making memories for the two of you right now, if not the W?
So I want to go, just because there was one other women's sports thing I wanted to talk about briefly that you reminded me of, because when you brought up the PWHL, there's going to be an expansion draft in 3 weeks for their two new teams in Seattle and Vancouver. And the PWHL expansion draft is actually pretty insane. We have prior precedent of just what just happened with the W, with the Valkyries, and how many players teams were able to protect. I believe it was 6 that each team could protect, so you could really only... They got a lot of role players. With the PWHL, everyone can protect 3 players, which means you cannot even protect your entire front line and top pairing on defense plus your goalie, which means star players are going to be selected. And they're kind of doing this intentionally because they realize that the league is imbalanced. So they want, the top teams to lose star players.
Now, when we say the league is imbalanced, what we mean is the New York Sirens are very bad.
They also said they're giving the Sirens the number 1 pick instead of any of the expansion teams.
That's hysterical. I've been trying to grapple with what I should do regarding the die that was cast and selected New York Sirens for me versus now a companion to the Vancouver Canucks.
I think you have to move to Vancouver, James, and no one will be upset.
Here's what we're doing. The team that finishes between those two higher in the standings this next year will get it. I'm sticking with the Libs for one more year. Not the Libs, the Sirens for one more year. I'm sticking with the Sirens for at least one more year, and then between the two, they got to earn my love, baby.
We will see who earns your love, but it'll be very interesting to see what things look like next year with 2 more teams and completely changed parity. That's going to be very fascinating to see what happens. Wouldn't be surprised to have it be like a Golden Knights situation where you get 1 year and then you win a title. So, it could be Vancouver title next year, James.
It would be the first Vancouver hockey title I've ever seen. But it can't happen next year. It can't happen next year. I'm with New York for at least 1 more.
Well, maybe the year after. And then the only other thing I want to briefly mention is that the Knicks are in the conference finals for the first time in 25 years. This is the best Knicks season of my memory, as I do not remember those older Ewing and Allen Houston and Larry Johnson teams, unfortunately. But one weird thing is that the last 4 times the Knicks have made the conference finals, they've played the Pacers.
Yeah, man. You played the Pacers 6 times in 8 years in the playoffs during the 90s.
Yeah, I mean, we also played the Heat a bunch of, I think 5 times in a row. But so obviously this year, Pacers, 99-2000, lost to the Pacers 4-2. 98-99, beat the Pacers 4-2. 93-94, beat the Pacers 4-3. So I don't know. If they win, they do even it up at 2-2. But if we win, we do get them back for the most recent one. So I'm kind of, even if it means that we're going to get blown out 4-1 to a Southwest Division team, which is the most likely parallel, I will still take that every day of the week.
It is so interesting that the Knicks are the most recent NBA champions in the Final Four. The only NBA champions in the Final Four. Though to the Pacers' credit, they won the ABA title in 73, the same year the Knicks won their most recent title.
One fan base is going to be extremely happy. And you know what? As much as I like the Thunder team, fuck OKC. They have not been around long enough to have the true pain of this. And they have Shai, who's going to be incredible for a decade and a half, so they'll be fine.
I think having the guy that literally, it was the house that KD built, and then KD said, hey, I'm going to go fuck off and go with those guys that just beat us. I think that counts as a large enough heartbreak that we can overlook how nascent they are.
They have made the finals, though. They have made the finals, though, very recently.
I am rooting for the Knicks. It cannot be said that OKC fans have not gone through some heartbreak.
And also, come on, in New York, you got, so much other stuff going on. You got Broadway. They have nothing. The only other thing that they're notable for is a horrific terrorist attack.
I was gonna say, that's the second Google result for OKC.
I'm happy you went that way, because I was gonna say they're notable for the fact that they're making it law that you have to teach that Donald Trump won the 2020 election.
Sure.
That's the state. I'm sure the city leans blue relative.
OKC's probably, OKC's probably
their color is blue. Their minor league team is the OKC blue.
And I mean, also, Anthony Edwards, I don't think there's a bad outcome at this point.
I do want, selfishly, I want Timberwolves Knicks, because then we get to see 99 hours of the trade being revisited. Whoever wins that will be like, oh, they won the trade forever, despite the fact that it'll be like, hey, both teams made the finals after making the trade. I think everyone's a winner here.
Yeah.
There will be no nuance. It will be fuck you, Dante DiVincenzo, as much as I love you and see the Villanova
God,
AT&T.
that would be devastating for those boys to have to play against Dante. I mean, they'll fucking smoke him, but like, damn, that would be tough. I mean, where's the Pope going to come down on
the Pope may have to come to get to game one and watch it.
Now,
we'll see.
Would he wear like normal guy clothes, or would he just be courtside in the full getup?
We've seen him at the World Series in normal guy gear, so I think he would have to do that.
No, he wasn't the Pope then. Here's what they do. They just get him a Nova jersey. Leo on the nameplate, the number 14 is the number. That's what they do for him. He's neutral. He just goes in a Nova jersey and everyone's happy.
He should still wear the hat, though.
Oh, absolutely. The jerseys, he's wearing it over top, like jersey over a hoodie style.
Right, exactly.
Diaz, what is it other than the Pope that's making memories for you right now?
Well, I'm going to keep it short because we are recording on Monday. By the time you, dear listener, hear this, the MAAC will have crowned their baseball champion. But for now, I can only offer the best baseball name that I've seen all year. The starting catcher for the Sacred Heart Pioneers, Steak Newman.
Steak Newman?
Steak Newman. Like, how do you like your steak? I like mine medium rare. Steak Newman.
Okay.
Steak Newman plays medium well.
He is like, I don't like OPS plus obviously like doesn't exist, but I look at his numbers, I'm like, damn good for a catcher.
Yeah,
pretty good.
Also, Sacred Heart Pioneers in its own, just a solid team name.
Right? No, yeah, it's amazing. I mean, come on, we've gone over. We got the Sacred Heart Pioneers, we've got the Niagara Purple Eagles. The defending champions snuck in on the last weekend with a sweep. If they did not sweep their 3-game set to end regular season play, they would not have got in. They did get in as an 8 seed.
They're the team no one wants to face.
They're hot. Nobody wants to face them. They'll probably just get demolished tomorrow. It's the first game at 11 a.m. But by the time you hear this, you'll know if I'm stupid or not. But you will definitely know that Steak Newman is an all-time baseball name.
And with all those memories made, it is time for us to turn to another game-breaking guy. And folks, I'm going to lead you on the roundabout tale of this guy this time. We're going to be talking about 19th century baseball today. We're going to go way, way back in history to a time when the nascent game is still being constructed in a lot of ways. You've got rules that are shifting every year. You've got teams that are moving, leagues that are popping in and out of existence. And in theory, in this kind of like primordial ooze era, it should be very easy to break the game because it's just so different and so new compared to what we know now. And I think there's one stat that relates to my guy that illustrates that. The two of you and our listeners may be familiar with Old Hoss Radbourn, a pitcher from this era.
I'm the guy who didn't know who Fred Merkle was, so I think you're barking up the wrong tree with me.
There was a popular like Twitter parody account with him for a while. Old Hoss Radbourn, also famous for being, as far as we could tell, the first person to flip off a camera in a photo. He was also a very good pitcher. In particular, he is famous for his 1884 season, in which he started a league-leading 73 games and won 60 of them. And during that, he posted 19.2 Baseball Reference WAR. That is an absurd total. The total of 15 has only been reached by 8 pitchers ever in the history of the game, and only once since 1900, Walter Johnson in 1913. But in 1884, 3 different people managed that total, and Radbourn is only second. Third is a guy named Charlie Buffington with almost exactly 15. Then you've got Radbourn in second, and in first place with 20.5 Baseball Reference WAR, the most accumulated in a single season by any player in Major League history, and a total that is more than all but 1,522 Major League players have put up in their career. That is 6.5% of all major leaguers ever who have equaled what this man did in one season. And that man is my guy today, Pud Galvin.
1800s baseball is... I just think it makes me think of the fake tungsten arm O'Doyle stuff where...
Oh yeah.
You could just tell me anything happened and I would believe you.
And it's a beautiful era for that reason. And that is very true. And we're going to have some moments that sound very tungsten arm, I think, in this. But with that preamble, we know these numbers are going to be stupid because our story starts all the way back in 1856. Some people say 1855. Largely, it seems to be agreed that it is 1856.
We're pre-Civil War at this point.
Yes, exactly. But it is on Christmas Day of either of those years, probably 1856, that James Francis Galvin is born in St. Louis, Missouri. And he's going to grow up in this poor working class neighborhood, a lot of Irish immigrants. And he assumes that he too will just kind of be a poor working class Irish immigrant for much of his life. Well, not an immigrant. He was born here. But, every other
description. That doesn't mean anything anymore.
Well, unfortunately it did in 1856 and doesn't now. But anyway, he gets trained as a steam fitter. And by 1874, he's pretty ready for that to be his life, except he has also showed a little bit of talent in this still relatively newfangled game of baseball, particularly as a pitcher. Let's talk about his style first. Pud has gotten his nickname for one of two possible reasons. The less charitable is that it's based around his appearance. He's 5'8" and stocky to begin with, and he will go from stocky to just kind of overweight as his career goes on. The more charitable one, the second possible reason, is that he turned hitters into pudding with his pitches, despite that small stature, and despite his small hands, which a lot of people, if you go back and read about him, harp on because he himself would say he couldn't grip a ball all the way around. And so with that, he could not throw a curveball. And at this point, there's pretty much two kinds of pitches. You either throw a fastball or a curveball. He's completely unable to throw a curveball. So he makes his living having just pinpoint control of a very good fastball. Also starting to do, fastballs with a slight drop motion, doing some stuff that we might call like cutters, sinkers, splitters nowadays. Back then, it's all just like, yeah, that fastball was a little bit different. It's still a fastball. His other more game-breaking element in terms of his game is his pickoff move. He gets in the windup, has the ball in his glove fully behind his back, and then just throws perfect no-look darts to whatever baseman he's going to, just without moving any part of his body other than his arm, flicks it to wherever the runner is at the time. It is a move that infuriates his opponents because they all want to cry, hey, this is a fucking balk. We don't know what a balk is now in the 21st century. They absolutely didn't know what the fuck a balk was in 19th century. The umpires will not accept it. One particular story to illustrate exactly how good he is at picking off. In 1886, he's going to be in a game where he loads the bases and then gets out of the jam by picking off in order the runner at first, the runner at third, and the runner at second. Unbelievable.
Okay, so he probably was doing a balk at that point if he's picking off three in a row and they never get a grasp on it.
Absolutely.
I mean, here's my thing. I accept, hey, he balked for the first guy. I accept, hey, he balked for the second guy. The third guy needs to know, oh, shit, he could just do fucking anything out here. I blame the third guy.
When you say that he balked for certain, I respond the way that people will often respond, like, oh, how much money is this worth? It's worth how much someone will pay. Is that a balk? Umpire didn't call it a balk, so I don't think it is.
How much did they pay the umpire to not call it a balk?
Hey, we're still years away from those kinds of corruption scandals. The game's still pure at this point. There's no money involved for anybody. So that's his style. Let's actually go through the career a little bit now. In 1875, he has his first ever pro season. He's been like a local dude that can pitch. And there's a team called the St. Louis Brown Stockings who are about to play their first ever season in the National Association, which is considered historically a major league. Although, given that you've never heard of it, it will probably go out of business relatively soon. In mid-May, their pitcher, singular, George Bradley, was sick. And so they need another pitcher. So they go and get this local boy, Galvin. He gets the call, although I should say for the record, the telephone would not be patented until the next year, so it's difficult to say that he gets the call in 1875. But you get the idea. He is added to the team, and he appears for 7 starts, 1 additional relief appearance, has an ERA plus of 169, pretty nice. But then once Bradley comes back, he's well enough to return, and they have no further need for Galvin. So Galvin is out of the majors for a little bit at this point. He's not out of baseball. He spends 1876 with the St. Louis Red Stockings, a different team named after Sox in the same city. And while this is unofficial, I should mention that it is not in the majors. He does throw on August 17th of 1876 what is referred to as the first quote-unquote professional perfect game. Let's refer to it as that way. It is still years before the first ever recorded Major League perfect game, which will be thrown by a future teammate of his, John Montgomery Ward and Lee Richmond later on. But this perfect game is pretty impressive because earlier that day, he threw a no-hitter that was only a no-hitter because of 3 errors by the defense. So he threw 18 innings one day without allowing a single legitimate hit or walk. Fucking incredible. Love me some Pud Galvin. That's 1876. 77 and 78, he's playing for a pair of International League teams. They're more or less just as unaffiliated as the Red Stockings were the year before. Plays for the Allegheny Grays in the Pittsburgh area, plays for the Buffalo Bisons, and ends up staying with Buffalo as they make the move up to the National League, his second major league that he has appeared in. And now he returns to the majors. He is ready to embark on one of the most successful and productive 6-year runs ever in the sport of baseball. In 1879, 66 games, 593 innings pitched with a 37 and 27 record for the third place Bisons, meaning he does all that for fucking nothing because there are no playoffs. There's not even really a World Series at this point. Just a disappointing third place finish for a guy who threw 593 innings.
And just doing like quick mental math, what the hell was wrong with him that he has one game that he only pitched 8 innings?
He has like a handful of games where they've gotten up to the 2-man rotation at this point. They're up to 2 pitchers on most teams now. So every once in a while, like if one of the 2 of them has just like a bad game in the first couple innings, they will come in and mop up the rest. Because he had a couple that he did not start that he also appeared into. It's weird math. He does not throw 66 complete games. He does throw like 58 or something absurd like that. And then in the offseason, goes to play some West Coast summer baseball. Ends up almost staying out there for money. Supposedly he signs with the Athletic Club of San Francisco. And then the Buffalo owner has to like call Galvin's wife to get him out of what is referred to by the San Francisco Chronicle as an iron-bound and copper-fastened contract. We've all heard ironclad before. I do like that it's now also copper-fastened.
Beautiful.
That's just, dude, I love going through fucking old newspaper clippings for these shits. Can't have been that iron-bound because he is back in Buffalo that year. And a poem captures the fans' excitement on his returns from another 19th century newspaper. God, I love them. Could we let our pitcher stay in the Golden City? Could our boys without him play? No, 'twould be a pity. So we pressed our rightful claims and won back our gentle James. He is often referred to as Pud. The 2 other nicknames he has, Gentle James and Gentle Jeems, which seems to just be an intentional mispronunciation. And also I will be referring to myself every once in a while now as your host, Jeems. From 1880 to 1882, all still with Buffalo, he only averages about a measly 450 innings pitched during these. And after his 1879 Bison's teammate, John Montgomery Ward, who I mentioned a moment ago, leaves them to join the Providence Grays, the biggest thing that happens during this period is Galvin is unfortunately not just on the losing end of John Montgomery Ward's historic perfect game, one of still only 24 in history. Pud Galvin is the final out in John Montgomery Ward's one. So his teammate gets the better of him to make that history. But then, finally, the worm starts to turn in 1883. This year, Pud Galvin starts a league-leading 75 games, throwing 656 and 1/3 innings, going 46 and 29 with 11 Baseball Reference WAR. In 2022, when Shohei Ohtani was robbed of an MVP award, he faced 660 batters and he appeared in 666 plate appearances, meaning that he was involved in a grand total of 1,326 plate appearances. For 1883 Pud Galvin, he only bats 322 times. 2,741 batters face him, meaning that he almost triples Shohei Ohtani's total from 2022. 3,063 plate appearances involve Pud Galvin in one way or another in this 1883 season.
That's a lot.
That's the Tungsten Armo Doyle shit. That is truly incomprehensible and is only topped, really, the next season. We've talked a little bit about 1884. That's what I mentioned there in the preamble. He is going to, in 72 starts, throw 636 and 1/3 innings. So he appears a little bit less than the year before, but he is so much better as a 46-game winner with a 1.99 ERA that he does indeed accumulate, still to this day, and presumably until the end of time, the most Baseball Reference WAR in a single season with 20.5. This does, from a sabermetric perspective, edge out the rival Old Hoss Radburn, but Old Hoss went 60-12 that year with a 1.38 ERA, and that is, what has kind of taken up the limelight when looking back on these two particular seasons in the 1880s, because these two, in 1883 and 1884, are incredibly closely matched. Galvin appears between those 2 years in 147 games that he starts, throws 1,292 total innings, going 92-51 for 31.5 BWAR with a 2.32 ERA. Radburn starts 141 games, throwing just over 1,300 innings, 1,311, with a 108.37 record, and actually because of his 83 being a little bit better than Pud Galvin's, he does over those 2 years edge him out with 32.3 career Baseball Reference WAR. A 1.70 ERA means that these two have basically just put on the single greatest pair of seasons each in consecutive seasons. And the wildest thing is, in 1880, back when Pud Galvin was, just kind of getting back into the flow of things with the Buffalo Bisons, he had a teammate, this kind of scrub position player who only made 6 appearances for that team, doesn't even appear on the team's roster if you go back to Baseball Reference, but does appear in some old newspaper clippings. That teammate is Old Hoss Radburn, who the Bisons let go after that season, meaning they could have had these two as their two-man rotation in 1883 and 1884. Just an absolutely bonkers thing. They won between them 200 games as pitchers in these two seasons. This is that wild 19th century shit. So even if Galvin is overshadowed, this is unquestionably the peak of his career. And that is unfortunately highlighted by a somewhat precipitous drop-off that's going to follow, likely caused by the fact that he just threw almost 1,300 innings across 2 seasons, not to mention all the baseball he played before that. In case you think that a capricious public and fickle fan base turning on a star player that they view as a commodity is new, fans by just July of 1885, after this 2-year stretch, are crying for a change as Pud Galvin has gone an unthinkable 13-19 to start the season. Oh my God, that sounds horrible. I would hate to see a pitcher with a record like that. God forbid a team had a record like that to start a season. Christ. Anyway, the ownership ends up selling him to Pittsburgh, to the Pittsburgh Alleghenies. This is a different Alleghenies than he played for earlier, because now they are in the American Association, meaning that Pud Galvin is appearing in his 3rd different major league. There is a little bit of karma. Galvin's replacements are even worse in Buffalo. Surprise, it might not have been the potential future Hall of Fame pitcher that you had that was your team's problem. And the attendance craters so much, the team folds after that year. That Buffalo Bisons team ceases to exist. 1885 does continue to be bad for Pud Galvin in Pittsburgh, but the next 3 years, he rebounds a little bit. From 1986 to 1988, he goes 80-67, averages 437 innings pitched with a 2.87 ERA. It's around 6 BWAR every year. And by the end of 1888, baseball has its first ever 300-game winner, Pud Galvin, who gets his 300th and 301st games there right at the end of that season. And now, I know we've talked about a lot, but this is actually the game-breaking angle that I've been burying here towards the end of the story. A little bit of trivia for you guys. There are 24 300 game winners. And I'll let you know, 7 of them, there is no reason to know who they are. They are old enough that like I had not heard of some of the names, and I'm someone that prides themselves on like looking up a lot of baseball history. Let's see how many of these 24 you think you can name in just a little bit of time ago. The 24 300 game winners. Just start throwing out some guesses. I'll let you know.
Cy Young, Walter Johnson,
Yep.
Nolan Ryan.
Correct.
Roger Clemens.
Roger Clemens is one. Yep.
Pedro didn't
Maddox.
get to 300.
Pedro did not get to 300. Maddox did.
Glavin.
Glavin also did. Yes.
They tormented the Phillies of my youth. A lot of those wins I unfortunately got to witness.
Yeah.
Did we say
Koufax
Christy
didn't.
Mathewson?
Koufax did. What was that?
Did we say Christy Mathewson?
Christy Mathewson. Very good. Thank you for bringing that over from last year.
Whitey Ford?
Whitey Ford, no. I was one that I expected to see on this list, but not Whitey Ford.
It's fucking Steve Carlton.
Steve Carlton. Yes, indeed. Steve Carlton's on here. Any final guesses before we just go through the list? You guys have done pretty well. Pretty well.
Did Randy Johnson get there?
Randy Johnson did. Well done. Randy Johnson did indeed.
Wait, did the guy who blocked Diaz get there?
No, he's fucking no. He absolutely didn't. I know he didn't.
He absolutely did not. He wouldn't have been on the ballot for so fucking long if he'd won 300 games.
I mean, he was on the ballot because he was an asshole, not because of his baseball stats.
A lot of assholes could get in if they won 300 games. Let's go through the list. There are a few from the 1800s. You've got Pud Galvin, Tim Keefe and Mickey Welch, people that I never heard of. Old Hoss Radburn is one of them, Charles Radburn, and John Clarkson, another one I had never heard of. In the early 1900s, I did not know Kid Nichols. I did know Cy Young and Christy Mathewson. Didn't know Eddie Plank, but I did know Walter Johnson and Grover Cleveland Alexander. And Grover Cleveland Alexander gets his in the 20s. Then there were just 3 between 1924 and 1982. Lefty Grove, Warren Spahn, and Early Wynn. And then, big quarter century from 83 on. You've got Gaylord Perry, Steve Carlton, who we mentioned. Tom Seaver. Was surprised either of you guys got Tom Seaver. Phil Necro, Don Sutton, Nolan Ryan, Roger Clemens, Greg Maddux, Tom Glavin, and our most recent and the way baseball is now, potentially the final one, was Randy Johnson in 2009. So those are your 24 300 game winners. How many of those 24 do you think are in the Hall of Fame?
I mean, I assume everyone other than Roger Clemens.
That is correct. 23 of the 24 all are Hall of Famers, and Roger Clemens is the only one who is not, which is the same reason that Barry Bonds is not, and that is because of performance-enhancing drugs. That is, whether it is fair or not, the legacy of those two players. But the thing is, it should maybe also kind of be the legacy of the very first member of this club, the first ever 300 game winner, Pud Galvin. In 1889, a 32-year-old Galvin has over 5,000 innings worth of mileage on his arm. And we're about to see another drop-off from that little 3-year bounce back that he's had here in Pittsburgh. And perhaps aware that he is aging and knowing that that is going to come and get him in a little bit, he goes seeking some help to stave off the aging curve. There is a report from the Washington Post. It says ahead of an August 13th game between Pittsburgh and Boston. This is not the Boston Red Sox. This is the Atlanta baseball team that formerly existed in Milwaukee and Boston. I don't like saying their name. This ends up being a 9-0 win for Galvin and the Alleghenies. Complete game shutout for him. And this took place right after Galvin was reportedly a member of a clinical trial for something called the Brown-Séquard elixir, which does, based on interpretations, and I will say I think this is a fair interpretation, make him the first ever recorded baseball player to have doped in one form or another, to have taken some kind of performance-enhancing substance. Charles-Edouard Brown-Séquard was an early pioneer in the field of endocrinology, the study of hormones and the like, and this is the title from his July 20th, 1889 study that had just been published in The Lancet, very prestigious British medical journal, and this was what they were going to be testing on. Note on the effects produced on man by subcutaneous injections of a liquid obtained from the testicles of animals. And those animals specifically were some mixture of guinea pigs, dogs, and monkeys, which was intended to get extra testosterone in these players. Fun fact, testes don't store the things that they secrete. They do not have a storage the way like the pituitary gland in your brain has a storage of hormones. May not have actually contained any true like amount of testosterone, because in order to like actually get any kind of clinical dose of it, some doctors have put out this figure. You would have to get like 500 pounds worth of bull testes, which is one of the like biggest concentrations of testosterone in any animal's testicles. I bet you didn't think we were going to be talking about these balls that much in this.
I mean, it's such just junk science, because we all know that pee is what's stored in the balls.
It is a lot of hackery. If you want to get more into like the obsession that America had with just implanting different kinds of animal testicles on their own, there's a really great book I would recommend that doesn't have to do with baseball, but is about a hack doctor who gave a bunch of people goat testicles, called Charlatan. Delightful book about this guy who operated in the Midwest for a number of years and like almost got to Congress on the back of just how popular he was for giving people goat testicles instead of their own testicles. And to be clear, Charles Edouard Brown-Séquard is like a really well-regarded scientist in some aspects. This is kind of like how, hey, Ben Carson is a really good neurosurgeon. Just don't necessarily ask Ben Carson about anything else. But the reason in particular that I think, even with this questionable effectiveness and even with this, slight fudging of whether or not this is a performance-enhancing thing and whether he should really have this historical distinction, I do think that this instance of Pud Galvin taking this elixir is really important because it illustrates two of the key things about doping in all of sports, and in particular doping in baseball. The first one is the obvious one, and that's that players will eventually do whatever might give them an edge. A lot of the time, they're not going to care about whether or not it actually works. They're not going to have time to wait to find out whether it actually works. This is a fickle job. You could lose it very quickly. They will take anything that they think might help them. Babe Ruth, just a couple years after this, reportedly, based on some anecdotal evidence, got a sheep testicle injection, and it didn't make him any better. It just made him sick, and he had to miss the game afterwards. So there are all kinds of like health concerns with amphetamines later on. There have been all kinds of health concerns with steroids, and between other forms of cheating like corking the bat, there are at times questions about the actual effectiveness of this and whether it's going to give you any kind of advantage. But it doesn't matter if the player thinks that they're getting advantage. And the other thing that also doesn't matter, and is illustrated by this example, is that it doesn't matter a lot to the spectators. The Washington Post, I think, really helps kind of set the tone early here. This is a quote from that article. "If there still be doubting Thomases who concede no virtue of the elixir, they are respectfully referred to Galvin's record in yesterday's Boston-Pittsburgh game. It is the best proof yet furnished of the value of the discovery." The three of us have varying opinions on PED use in sports. Xavier is incredibly anti. Diaz, you were like, dude, let them have fucking whatever they want as long as it's recorded. I'm somewhere in the middle where like, look, Barry Bonds and Roger Clemens should be in the fucking Hall of Fame. Yeah, if it's against the rules, you shouldn't do it. If it's not against the rules, I mean, we can't stop you necessarily. But this quote, I think, sets the tone so early that a lot of fans aren't going to care. Like, PEDs in 1994, in all the years after the 1994 strike, did a lot to save baseball. A lot of people watched ball go far because dude put needle in body to make ball go far.
What's the Simpsons Mark McGuire quote? Do you want to know the horrible truth?
Or do you want to see me sock a few dingers?
Dingers!
I mean, it's all wrapped up right here. You've got a pitcher who has a lot of skill already, just like Roger Clemens did, just like Barry Bonds did, but who wants that extra edge, particularly as he starts to see the downward turn of the aging curve. And you've got a public who is kind of fine with it as long as it makes their favorite player perform better or makes their favorite team have more success. Now, there's not any evidence of Galvin using this substance for any kind of sustained period, and perhaps as a result, probably not actually as a result, but as a result of just him aging, he continues to trail off in the final years of his career. In 1889, he finishes with the Alleghenies, and then after that, he returns to a different Buffalo Bisons in the 1890 season in his fourth Major League, the Players League, which was a player-owned co-op that was started by his former teammate and former rival, John Montgomery Ward, who had tried to kind of break the game himself by setting up this different ownership structure that unfortunately only lasts for a single year before it goes out of business. But that is 4 different major leagues that Pud Galvin performed in. And then after that falls apart, Galvin goes back to Pittsburgh for 1891 and 1892, finishing his career in 1892 after a midseason move in his native St. Louis. He goes to the Browns, which I got excited about for a second. Were we dealing with a potential Orioles legend? No, the Cardinals were for a long time also referred to the Browns because never forget that baseball is incredibly stupid. And that is the end of Pud Galvin's Major League career. In 688 games, through just over 6,000 innings over 15 years. And that, again, does not include his 3 years in unaffiliated ball. So likely even higher than that. Just an absolutely astonishing workload. And yes, a completely different game. But a workload that absolutely had some effect on his career as it goes on, because you start to see the downturn. You start to see the loss of skill, loss of endurance, and all of that. And unfortunately, he doesn't really figure out what to do with his life afterwards. His post-playing career, it is eclectic and it is kind of brief. Never finds a place away from the mound. He tries umpiring for a season, doesn't really work out. Tries pipe laying for a while. He owns an unsuccessful saloon. Apparently, the saloon was not particularly successful, but he had a really good bartending staff because all 5 of his bartenders went on to have incredibly successul saloons in the St. Louis area. So this is one of those things where I don't know if you've ever heard this, but I feel like in a lot of music history, you hear about these bands where, this one punk band existed for 6 months and then totally flamed out, but everyone who went to a concert of theirs ever was inspired to go back home and start their own band and then became incredibly influential. He, this whole time, is just kind of sinking further into poverty with both his wife and his children. They had 11 children. He will eventually see many of them die before their time. And he kind of dies before his time. His obscurity in the baseball world is partially due to the fact that a lot of his teams sucked, partially due to the fact that he is overshadowed by guys like Old Hoss Radburn, and partially because he dies early and tragically in 1902 as a 45-year-old, survived by his wife and 6 children. While contemporaries like Cy Young and Radburn, and then other 300 Club members like Mathewson, etc., they all get almost immediate enshrinement into Cooperstown, there really isn't any even groundswell for Galvin for a while. It's not that, he's getting considered to put off. He's just not on the radar at all as people are starting to build out the Baseball Hall of Fame and Museum early on. It's not until this Buffalo historian by the name of Joseph Overfield learns of him and starts really banging the drum in the 1950s ahead of his eventual 1965 induction. Maybe 3 decades later or so than it should have been, but an eventual induction nonetheless. And I, as our own historian, am proud to have now done my attempt at doing much the same thing. So I hope that you have enjoyed my case for Pud Galvin's induction into not just the Hall of Fame, but also the Hall of Guy.
I like the last thing you said about the bands who you never heard of that spawned other, important people. You ever heard of the band Darlin?
Not off the top of my head.
So Darlin was a French band that lasted about 3 months. But when the 3 people in Darlin broke up, 2 of them then founded Daft Punk and the other one founded Phoenix.
When you said French, I was assuming that one of those 2 bands was going to be involved. And hey, it's both.
It's both. So I do like thinking about that. And you also brought in the great bit of late 1800s weird ass medicine where you mix kind of actually knowing what you're doing with also selling snake oil.
Yeah. It should be mentioned that while Charles Edouard Brown-Séquard does not actually really know what he's talking about, it's because he's the first person to be talking about endocrinology in any real way in organized medicine. And it is really important for the development of that field. Everyone that comes after him does do a lot of really smart stuff about hormones and about understanding that. And eventually they're able to use that to make much more effective performance enhancing drugs.
Have you ever heard of Dr. Willard Bliss?
I will again say, not off the top of my head.
So, Doctor is his name, not his title. His given name was Doctor.
Great called shot by the parents.
He is most famous for being the physician who treated James Garfield after he was shot and completely failed to treat him by rooting around in his body with unsterilized hands for a bullet and not treating him well. But the thing is, this man did go to medical school, was a full-on physician, but also sold a random cure-all that he claimed cured cancer, syphilis, ulcer, all chronic blood diseases, and was kicked out of DC's medical society for that before treating the president who was shot. This time is such a weird mixture of we're learning real medicine, but also we have all this bullshit too.
And never forget the best medicine to come from that era, Coca-Cola. Real quick, a couple things about the James Garfield thing, just because you brought it up. One, I don't know if that exhibit is still available at Mutter. I have to assume the Mutter Museum in Philadelphia has moved on to other temporary exhibits. But if they have any way to access that archivally, it was an incredible exhibit when I went to see that during my second trip to the Mutter. I will also say, your second trip to the Mutter Museum, a little harder to stomach than the first one. There's something about the first one where it's novel and cool, and the second one you're like, oh man, there's a whole lot of fetuses in jars here. But yeah, just reading about how he was taking care of Garfield, disgusting. I am thrilled, for point number 2, that we're getting a prestige drama coming out in the next couple years about the assassination of James Garfield. Also, do you know what day of the week President Garfield died on?
It's gotta be a Monday.
It was a motherfucking Monday. Garfield hates Mondays, dog. Diaz, any final thoughts, any final questions I can answer for you about Pud Galvin?
I mean, I just love that he looked at the rule book. He said there's nothing in the rules that said that I can't inject monkey semen into my bloodstream. And he went for it. And did it work? Did it not? I mean, ball don't lie. Balls don't lie.
I'm glad that you two appreciated this story so much. It was really fun to kind of get the angle at this. I wanted to figure out. And it was weird to learn that, hey, this is the first performance-enhanced drug. Okay, cool, because it counts. So thank you. Thank you to producer Craig and the coders behind him for helping make this possible. Thank you to the good folks at Sports Reference. Relied on them a lot for this presentation. Thank you to musical director Don Ham for that lovely theme music. But most of all, thank you, dear listener, for joining us again. As always, please feel free to check out everything about the show at bit.ly/remember that guy, all one word, all lowercase. Stream Elite. Follow us on social media. And that's all I've got this week because my computer battery is starting to die. So, folks, I look forward to seeing you next week when I will still be one of your hosts, James.
that got me. I'll give it to you, James. I've been the very special guest, Xavier.
And I'm Diaz. And as the famous song goes, you spin Guy right round, baby.
I'm seeing now that Lauri Markkanen is potentially the person to package the third pick with Paul George for.
I mean, maybe, but I don't see a world in which Danny Ainge makes a trade with the Sixers that is fair.
That's
he'd
fair,
be he'd be like, sure, yeah, 3 in Paul George and the 28 Clippers pick, and throw in a 30 lottery protected first, and I'll give you Lauri. And it's and number 5. It's like the Star Wars meme, and I'll give you Lauri and pick number 5.
And pick number 5.
Number 5.
Danny Ainge, man, he needs to be put in jail. Not for anything real.
John Elway should probably be in real jail.
Oh, John Elway should be in real jail. It's Jim Irsay now.
Yes.
You know what? Even that, Jim Irsay he clearly has demons. He hasn't endangered anyone else with his substance abuse, as far as I know.
Right, dude. It's so funny how it's just oh yeah, just your normal run-of-the-mill fatal golf cart accident. These things that just happen all the time with, entirely sober of mind people.
What an asshole. Fuck John Elway. He didn't want to play for Baltimore. He can eat shit.
Fuck John Elway. And all who would dare spite the wonderful city of Baltimore.
John Elway did Joe Flacco dirty. We fucking hate John Elway around here.